Welcome to the webinar on AI and design systems. Um, I wanted to start with a little bit about my experience prompting and using AI. This is pretty much an image of what it's like most of the time. Um, I uh, I think I put in the perfect prompt. I've added the relevant files into context, and the output still looks like a dog's breakfast, and I don't know why, right? Um, Everything that I know about the coding, about AI companies and LLMs, um, it's that the coding is like the battleground for these like LLM like labs. And so the industry at large is trying to figure out how to improve code quality. And I've myself have discovered that there are just a bunch of wrong answers. As developers, like I think we all thought like LLMs would speed us up, but more often than not, it feels like prompting is like more cumbersome than actually just doing it ourselves.
Did you prompt that?
Right?
Because if so, it did a great job.
Great for this slide. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Um, hey everyone, my name is Dominic. I'm the co-founder of Chromatic, the company behind Storybook. We're here today to talk about combining AIs and design systems, and I'm just thrilled to bring TJ up on stage, who's joining me. He's the founder and CEO of Southleft, a design systems consultancy that have worked with folks like Stanford and Caterpillar and PetSmart. TJ, do you want to say a couple words?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's TJ Pitre, live in New Orleans, Louisiana. I've been running Southleft for going on 14 years now, and the better part of a decade has been pretty much focused solely on design systems and enhancing design systems and working with design systems teams and augmenting teams for product acceleration and all that good stuff. Our primary focus is on front-end design and development. And yeah, it's been a super exciting last year or so with all this new AI advancement technology.
Thanks so much. And yeah, we're going to see a lot more from Southleft and TJ in just a moment. But before we begin, let's talk about what's inside, what we're going to show in this webinar. First of all, you're going to see connecting your design system to an LLM, uh, generating UI that's on brand with your actual components, prototyping fast without sacrificing quality, and all of this will be through the lens of a live demo. And during the demo, don't hesitate to ask questions again. So as we all know, LLMs can generate code fast, but without your design system's context, the results are actually pretty unpredictable. And for me, they're kind of unusable. A design system, just to recap, is a living showcase of your organization's blessed patterns, right? Um, and even though LLMs have trained on billions of lines of code at this point, they don't really know anything about your operational context. And your operational context is the thing that ensures the code actually gets shipped. So at best, in the old way, you ended up with generic output, right? Not super useful, and not super different than any kind of template that you could have pulled off the shelf in the past. What you want is for the LLM to use your blessed patterns from your design system. And we're going to use an MCP server today to connect the two things. Here's the high-level approach that we're going to showcase. So first, Storybook as a system of record for your components, stories, and documentation. MCP as the vehicle for supplying context. And finally, LLM for code generation. In this case, I believe we're using Claude. Uh, so I'm going to hand the mic over to TJ now to get into it. Don't hesitate to ask questions, and we'll raise them during the demo and afterwards during the dedicated Q&A session. TJ, you have the floor.
Thank you. So before I screen share, I can just kind of give you a little background info. We do a lot of exploration with AI and just different like AI infused workflows and products and tooling. And I think one of the main things that brought us here was a lot of the work that we're doing with the various abilities or capabilities that MCP has, for those who aren't aware, a model context protocol, ways for AI to consume information similar, not very different from the way APIs work. And then all of the different ways that we kind of inject that technology along the workflow that we mostly work within, which are design system workflows. Specifically, one of the things that led us to this conversation that we're having right here was almost like it was like two things that had happened. One was we started to dabble in we're always using like AI agents and AI clients that had agentic capabilities to be able to kind of help us scaffold up our code, and that was great. And we were using this other little tool to help generate component data based off of some YAML files and things like that. And then we moved on to this thing that we called Figma Bridge, which is a VS Code extension that used your personal access token to Figma and a link to like the canonical source component. That brought down like a JSON payload, which made it easier for the agent to read and understand how to assemble these components. Then came along the Figma MCP, but not the official MCP. It was like a community-driven MCP. Now I think it's called FrameLink, and chatted with the person who created that, and that actually worked for us really well. To me, that was like what eclipsed, like, okay, wow, now this is starting to like really get real, like because the quality of the code that it was producing was really legit. And then at the same time that was happening, we were having a lot of these conversations with a lot of different projects that we take on. And a lot of those conversations happen around, or at least like the parts where there's like a gray area when it comes to negotiating price on a project comes around like the recipe or higher level organism area, where people want to see more templates that are assembled using the components that have already been created. And sometimes it's hard to price those things because like people want to see something like a job board, and it's like, all right, so job board, it's like one template, sure. Maybe it's just like a recipe where maybe there's no header and footer or something on it, and and then they want to see it with like very little data, or they want to see it like very densely populated with lots of pagination and exposed filters, and it's like, well, technically that's one thing, but maybe it's just like variations of one thing, and the components are already there. So like it's not really difficult to scaffold this thing together, but then we don't want to get carried away and one thing leads to another thing. So that led us to build this product now what we're calling Story UI. And Story UI was a way for us to say, okay, we were already dabbling in all this MCP technology and we're a team of senior front-end developers. So what's stopping us from leveraging this technology and doing something on our own? So we built it for our purposes, just to be able to like, so I can go into a design system and then just kind of scaffold these things up together and see what we could do with them. Originally, it was mainly built to do things like card components and a lot of story inventory. Because if you ever built like a date picker and you have to build like every version of a date picker and like how it works, and it's like it's a significant amount of work that goes into building every story and every variant for all of the different ways that some of these more flexible components should be displayed. So Story UI was an easy way just to go, all right, let's just rattle off all these stories and we could do it within 45 seconds. So
Variations can blow out scope for sure. Like
yes,
that's
yeah. And
such a
it's
huge task, and people don't underestimate it. Even for like a button, right? Like
bugs are the worst.
hundreds, thousands of variations.
Bugs are the worst offenders because people always want to start design systems with buttons, even though like buttons are arguably one of the most complex things to build in a design system. It has the most variants and states and properties to go along with it. So anyway, without further ado, I'll share my screen, and I'm going to be brave and I'm going to share like my whole screen. So apologies if I have focus mode turned on, so no notifications had popped in. Uh, let's see. Um, so this interface is Story UI as you would get it if you were to download it today. It's available.
Hey, TJ, you might want to zoom in a couple notches.
Zoom in on this
Yeah.
like that.
Like a Man Plus, yeah.
Great. I hope it doesn't break anything. Okay.
It's all good.
It should be all right. So Story UI is a node module that you can install into any Storybook capable any Storybook environment, any environment that has your components and Storybook installed in it. Let me give you just a quick rundown of what the process looks like. So this is just a mermaid chart. Once you any
Can you zoom in
standard,
on this too, by the way?
yeah. Uh,
Oh, we'll get it. We're seeing some requests in the chat.
is that good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So this is just a standard no package install. So npm install story UI, and then the story UI installs. Then there's this interactive setup where you just do npx story UI init, and that's going to do a couple of things here. So that's going to detect the design system that's in there. There's ones, it detects popular ones. So like Chakra, Ant, Material, Mantine. I want to say one more. There's probably another one in there too. And if not, then it'll detect your directory structure looking for, right now, this is React specific. So it looks for certain file extensions. And it also works with obviously custom design systems as well. It installs this configuration file. So this configuration file kind of looks like this. It's just some data that's specific to your setup, and copies the story UI component. So this is like the story UI interface that it copies as a story in the Storybook, generates a environment file, updates the get ignore to ignore that environment file if it isn't ignored already. And then it updates your package.json. So once that configuration is complete, you go ahead and add your Claude API key, and then run npm run storybook with UI, which will do two things. It spins up your storybook dev environment, and then it also spins up the MCP server. The MCP server is this. I could show you how this will work when we start generating stories. I like to run them separately because I like to see the logs that the MCP is spitting out, because it gives me a lot of indications of where it's running into errors, where it's having component issues, where it might be hallucinating on some markup, or any errors that I see. It's going to come out in this like verbose mode that I have in the CLI. And then yeah, so once this, and then this will spin up your dev instance, and then you get this, which means you can just start prompting away. So that's set up. That's the story behind it. And then let's get to creating some layouts. What I like to do early on is just kind of warm up. And I like to go with I have a couple of prompts and copying and pasting from over here. I like to start with just like the inventory way of doing this. And this is something like generate all button variants on one page. So this is a pretty quick. The more complex the component that you're prompting, the longer it's going to take. I want to say under the hood, this is using Claude Opus 4, but you could put any API model in there to mess with. So, and then here's all the different button variants. I should mention the design system that I'm working with in here is Mantine. I like it because it's comprehensive, and it's kind of like a one size fits all design system. Ant is great at this too. But I'll show you later on another design system that we're working with. That's a custom design system. This was originally on our internal design system, Altitude, which is a web component based design system, and we were using it on our React wrapped version of it. So here's all the button variants. So, and they're all working in interactive, and yeah, so this is a good way. And if I asked it to, instead of putting it all on one page, I asked for it to put it all on one page. If I didn't, then it would generate it as specific individual story variants. So I'd have a long line of other links down here to click on.
So TJ, real quick. First of all, if you don't mind zooming in a little bit more, there's some folks in the chat
Yeah.
requesting that. Second of all, you mentioned Mantine as like the design system that you're pulling in to as like the reference point for these buttons and for the story generation. Can you talk about how you're doing that?
Yeah, so it's a node package. So I npm install Mantine and Mantine core, Mantine tokens, Mantine icons, all of those pieces. So all of that exists in node modules directory. Part of we have a function in Story UI that's called enhanced component discovery. and it does a full search of certain directories that are by default, but then you can also in the options set up the directories that you want it to search, and it'll go and find those particular components, save them to the MCP is what stores all the information and all of the data associated with it. So it has an awareness of all of the props and everything that's associated with each one of these components. It might help to see. So this is a story that's generated. So if we go in the actual story that it generated, which is button variants. So if I open this and make it a little bigger, you can see that it's using a stat component, title component, group component, button component, and all the different variants that it detects.
Yeah.
And so it's giving it a title order. It's using the properties for the title and so on and so forth for each one of these.
So the button is from Mantine. Is the title and the group and the stack also from Mantine as well?
Yeah, it uses the components of the design system to assemble the layouts, even if it's like an inventory type layout.
Right. That's cool. And so let me get this right. You have Story UI, that's an NPM package that has a bunch of functions or like ways that you can provide references to the design system. When you run Story UI, it creates an MCP server that includes that context, and that MCP server is the thing that I guess Story UI proxying Claude is talking to. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. So this is the MCP server, and I send it a query, and let's see, trying to find out where it started. So here's where the story generation that I just did started. So it's saying it's a validation successful, Claude's final response, and then it starts to assemble. It does a component discovery because it does this check in real time. So if I added more components to it, the purpose of this in the beginning was to have it happen in real time because we were constantly creating components for these projects. So like 2 to 3 of them a week we would be working with, and then we wanted to make sure that we were able to generate layouts that included any of those new components.
Yeah.
So it was important that we get them right away. So when you run that prompt is when it just rechecks and reindexes and caches it and on the MCP server, and then it goes through and then it looks at this. This is something we could talk about in a little bit too. It checks the documentation. We have a docs directory where optionally you can add your documentation if there's a certain way that you like to use tokens, or if there's best practices for things like layout, like I prefer flex over grid, or if there's components that do similar things, but you want one to prioritize over the other one, typically that would be somewhere in your documentation. Right now, Mantine doesn't need that because it's just so well designed and well put together. So this is just, I didn't put any documentation in there. And then there's this considerations file, which is like your last line of defense. So like your considerations file would be things like, in instances where your AI is starting to hallucinate on stuff, like maybe it's not using subcomponents correctly, or maybe it's using emojis in place of icons. So this is where you would say, hey, I saw you using emojis. Let's not do that. Like let's make sure that we're using, the React icons or whatever library you have in there.
Right.
And then so it goes through it. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, TJ, just one quick question that might clarify something. In this demo, you're using Mantine. Do you have to use Mantine? Can you use any design system? Seems like there's some clarity needed there.
No, the one I was going to show later on, this is Workday, Workday's Canvas kit. So that's a publicly accessible design system. You can grab it from NPM, and I installed that one. And then this is me just doing the same thing with that one. It does have more documentation that I add to it because the way Workday's Canvas kit works, there's very specific ways to include the icons and tokens. So I added that all into the considerations in the documents so that way it knows how to create these things. Spacing was an interesting thing on the Canvas kit design system. So it was important that I put in some considerations for default spacing for things like vertical spacing and horizontal spacing. But yeah, so this is a very similar thing, except it's not like a custom one size fits all design system. This is one that's very much specific to the products that Workday creates, and it works with that just as well.
All right. So then a couple follow up to the, all of those are React projects. Does it have to be React, or is that just what you're comfortable with?
It's React right now.
Okay.
It would take it's my number one priority ticket to address to make this available for Angular and Vue and Svelte and other. It's just React is the one that right now we do most of our projects are React based. And so we built this as a tool for us and for the clients that we serve. But ideally, I want to move into making this more available to others. But I've actually gone in another direction where I've been doubling down on it more and building more features into it. So so it's been a fun ride, and it's been a great just to watch its evolution and all the different things I've been able to incorporate into it. So yes, I do want to extend it to other libraries and frameworks, and it is on the roadmap.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. What else? So I guess I had planned on just like going through and showing some like neat things that we do with generations, and then kind of taking through some of the other neat things it can do. So buttons, so like inventories are great. That's a nice thing to do. So, but sometimes you want to see like things like tabbed interfaces have interaction. So this is something that we can use. I'm saying show tabs with underline pills and default variants. And then this could do something like this, where here's different versions of tabbed interfaces. And these are all active, and it just took about 30 seconds to put that together. And then if I look under the hood at what it created, I can go into this tab variant. You can see that it's using tabs, tab list, tabs tab, and then given the title value in there. But this is the actual component code that it produced.
Right. That's really cool. So so far you've showed like inventory of like buttons and tabs. These are based on like existing components that are documented, or that from Mantine, and you're expressing the totality of like their APIs.
Yeah, let's have some fun then. So let's build some layouts. So I'm a sucker for a good card component. So I'm going to say generate 3 cards side by side, one with an image, title, description, one with just text content, and another one with a header, footer, action button. That's 3 buttons or actions. So it's probably going to put some buttons in there. And I said make the content Taylor Swift related. And then here it is. So here's all about Taylor Swift. Sometimes I get these broken images. To fill in these images, I'm using Pixum, which is like a free image thing. So sometimes I have to refresh it. So I fill it. There it is, an actual image. And then here it is, 3 different cards with the content that I asked for. And then with the call to action buttons here, got some tour dates and some Taylor Swift stats. So it's cool that not only can you actually generate component structures or inventory, you can also dictate the content that goes into it as well. So if you're doing QA things like, I want to know the character limit that's comfortable for a card, then you can say generate a card component with an image, a title, a deck, and then make that deck be 16 paragraphs or something like that, or load it up with button groups. And then just to see the way it would render. So really the sky's the limit with this kind of stuff.
It's really cool. So what you're doing here is like you're extrapolating from the design system that you've already provided and asking it to do different things that generate new variations that have not existed in this design system before.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of it is just iterating. Like it's about proof of concept testing. So product owners, project managers, designers, before they even think about bringing this into Figma, they might want to just noodle over it in Story UI to see if it's something that they even want to consider investing any time in design with. Or what it generates might be great just out of the gate, and then you might want to just send that story over to a product engineer to, like I said, let's put this in a ticket somewhere. So that was a 3-card layout. So let's do something a little bit more robust. Also want to mention that this is the more riskier I get with these layouts, the more error prone it might be. So I haven't had any bad things happen with it yet, but also this is a live demo, so these are usually prone to having things happen. So right now I'm asking it to generate a Kanban style dashboard with backlog ready, in progress, and done.
That's like a pretty tricky one. If I asked ChatGPT or Claude just to do that myself without this, I would get, I'd probably get a much worse result.
It nailed it. I mean, I could
Yeah,
probably say, maybe a little more metadata in here, but it looks like a Trello board,
yeah, it's
similar.
fantastic.
But I think it did a pretty good job. Obviously, that they're not draggable. There's no draggable components in this system. But if you had that ability to, you could. So I do want to show another feature of this that helps tie it into, kind of takes it away from the interface of Storybook. Not that we want to get away from it, but the the power of the MCP part is that the MCP doesn't have to live inside of Storybook or live inside. It doesn't have to necessarily just be tied to the Story UI, Chat UI. It can be used anywhere where MCP clients are available. So Claude Code is one that you could use it on, but then if this feature is mainly used for, or should be used by, people who probably don't have code editors or command line terminals available to them, then the low-hanging fruit for this is Claude Desktop. It's you just download it. You can plug in the Story UI MCP in there. It's a very minimal configuration to get it set up. It's like 2 lines of code, and then you could prompt away at it. So I can ask it, is Story UI available to you?
But do you mind zooming in real quick?
Oh yeah, can I do that in here? Yes. Oh, it isn't saying that it doesn't have. I wonder why I would be saying that. Yeah, I was having some issues with Claude earlier. Let me just, this is what was happening. It would never stop the query. I would have to start a brand new one.
This
Let me just,
happens all the time. It's a live demo thing. I get it.
oh, absolutely. Well, it was happening. I tested it right before I got on here, and then I said, maybe it'll fix itself after I quit it, but let me just give it a shot. Use Story UI to create a basic card component with a image, title, and call to action.
A lot of people in the chat are corroborating the Claude is kind of like spotty today.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I saw there was Anthropic had something. So anyway, it found it. Oh, there it is. So it's something going on. Oh, so this isn't me. This is the Figma dev MCP server is being buggy. But I'm not using that right now anyway, so I think that's fine. So just to show you what it's doing. So I just said create a basic card component. I hope everybody can see this. Create a basic card component with the following. I just said this, and then it goes ahead and does this. This is using Opus 4. And then the beautiful part about this is that Story UI, Chat UI on the Storybook interface is kind of a one-way street. It's like I can prompt it, and then it'll be like success or fail. And then I can say, all right, well, iterate over it and do this thing this way. And then it'll do a full pass on it. The way it does the full pass is it passes in how the MCP or the AI interpreted what the layout should be on top of whatever the next prompt is. So the odds of you getting a slightly different variation are it's minimal, depending on how different your prompt is or what it is that you're trying to make different. But the beauty with this is that it's a two-way street. I can keep talking to it. Usually, if it wasn't continuing to do this here, I can keep talking to it. But even if I press this stop button, it doesn't seem to stop. But it did generate a card. So here's the card that it generated, and then it went a little extra and it grabbed one with a different image, which really doesn't matter, but it also changed the button variant, and then it gave me this little compact version, which I think is cute. So that's fun. And so I wanted to show how we can iterate over this stuff and how it has complete awareness of the story ID in here. So I can iterate over it endlessly, and I can delete it. I can generate a new one if I wanted to, but I can't get it to stop I can't add another prompt in here. I want to say like add 2 call to action buttons, but I can't enter them.
Yeah, while it's like loading, We had a question from chat just to confirm, like, where does it create the story? I think you showed it really quickly in Cursor earlier, just the file system. Maybe you can take us through like, hey, the basic card with image and CTA, where's the story actually living?
It's in a so in the initialization in the process of getting it set up, it has a path where you want to put it. So it's in stories, and then I create a directory called generated, and it puts them all in these generated. But you can make it whatever path you want when you initialize it.
So,
Yeah,
Mohammed,
so
I
it,
think,
it is updating your source code then.
It is, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
dropping a file in a story in a generated directory.
yeah. Yeah, I think it
and
might be wise to pause and handle some Q&A for a little bit. It's stacking up quite a bit, and so I'd like for it to inform the rest of the demo if that's okay.
Well,
Um,
so it looks like so I had to restart on Claude. I want to show this part. So this is me updating the story. So it found the story, and then now it's going to do the part where it updates it, and then this is the story. There it is, and then you saw it happen in real time. So it just updated and added two in there,
yeah.
and then it tells you what it did. But man, what a time for Claude to
Hmm.
be having issues. So this isn't my fault. Everybody could see that, and maybe some other people experiencing it too. But I love
Yeah,
how it
for
gives you
sure.
like an explanation of what's going on, which is great. Yeah, I'll stop for some questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I do just want to say the Storybook team right now is working on a Storybook MCP server. And one of the specific things, the abilities that we're building in is making it so that your LLM can report back a working story URL like consistently. So that they can like close that feedback loop a little bit. Because how Storybook generates those URLs is a little bit of like a black box. And so we're exposing that. All right. One of the questions is just kind of general. Do you have any thoughts about the security concerns of MCP? Like somebody was trying to use it for their work and they were told to stop because it could like inject things into the prompt, which could produce malware or take over a machine or whatever.
Security concerns about the MCP. I don't, not for this, because this is a custom MCP that we created. So it's not like we're using anything off the shelf for this. Um, so I'm aware of all the functions that are available in the MCP, and the only external connection is the Claude connection. So it's the Anthropic API connection. And then we do like in terms of like what's coming back, the MCP gives us like its logs of what comes back. So I have a good idea of what's being sent and what's being communicated to Claude to give it enough information about the components to be able to properly select and choose the ones to create this layout based on the prompt.
Yeah. So I imagine it's similar to other things where like the server being open source is a huge boon where you can go look at the code yourself. You can know exactly what it's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all available.
Okay. Another question, completely different, is how does the quality of the design system in Figma relate to the quality of the output, like the generated code?
That's a great question, and there's a this in the flow of the way that we envision a lot of this AI infused design systems working is it's all about context, and we try to stress as much as we can, putting in as much time and effort and eyes into the source of truth, which if we would all agree that Figma is that source of truth, then really understanding the metadata and properties panel, ensuring that descriptions are added to the components and then the variants. What we want to do moving forward is try to give the AI as much context as we possibly can to help make better informed decisions about how these components should be laid out and what the intended structures of these components are. So like we say the words purpose and intent a lot. So we can leverage those description fields to pass that information through something like a Figma MCP into your code base to further educate the AI to determine how the code structure should be created. And so like the AI, there's some other things that we do that are kind of outside of the context of this call. But when you're leveraging something like the Figma MCP, there's all of the information that it's gathering from the component that you're pulling into your code base. And then it's also referencing other components in your code base to look for things like coding methods, token structures. So what we do normally with our prompting is we'll give it a token path to understand where to find those tokens. So that way it saves on a couple of, there's two tokens here. So there's design tokens and then there's token expenditure from AI to save on the token expenditure. So if you can kind of like allow it to do less thinking by feeding it more of that information, then the results would be better. So it's like, the more input to better input you get, the better the output will be. So giving it those reference components I like to use the example for banner a lot because the banner component that we typically work with has, it's a composed structure that consists of maybe 2 or 3 other components. It has slotted elements for things like icons. It has a expandable and collapsible area that includes another like a potential paragraph of text. So there's some interactivity in there. So when that MCP pulls it through, there's things that it can gather from the description where you could tell it that this is an expandable and collapsible one. I like to use the accordion, for example. Like sometimes accordions, you'll allow all of the accordion panels to be exposed. Sometimes you only want one to be exposed. But the only way for the MCP to know that is if you describe that somewhere in the Figma, in the tech specs, and the component specs. So once you say that, then when it generates that accordion or like the accordion panel or accordion group, then it'll know how it should operate. I'll caveat this by saying like it rarely ever hits at 100%, but the more reps you put in and the more you identify where the gaps are, then you start to realize what you need to do on your end to be able to help the AI to be able to produce the best results. So we have a couple of sub agents that we've created called Figma MCP helpers that when the Figma MCP does its thing and the code's generating, it enlists the aid of these sub agents that'll go through and comb and check things like accessibility and interactivity, prop definitions, strict typing, like all the things that are normally associated with the code base that these components are being generated within.
Thanks for that. It seems like maybe overly reductive, but summarizing that would be like you define quality in Figma as structure. Like the more structure you can provide, the better this translation will go.
Structure and intent. So it's like in the accordion example, it's like, well, the expectation is for this accordion to operate like this. And then that's one of those things that would indicate to the AI that, okay, this some sort of interaction that needs to happen where, if this is open, then I have to make sure that everyone else needs to close before I allow this one open.
Okay. There have been a lot of questions about using this tool with internal versus like published open source design systems. If you could talk to like whether there's some configuration differences there or if you've seen different results.
If it's React-based, so I've used this. So the ones that I have loaded up and every week I just clean out the testing ones that I'm working with and then load up new testing ones. So in this one, I have Ant, Base, which is Base is Uber's design system, working with that one. Chakra's in here, Material, Tamagui, I have one in here for. But before that, I was using Polaris by Shopify. I've used Atlassian's. I forget what the name of that one was. Material, obviously, that was one of the first ones that we tested on. The first one that this was tested on was this is Altitude, which is our design system. We have this web component and React version of it. This was the one that it was originally tested on, like the very early stages. It was actually built to be a part of this design system. And then it wasn't until I made a demo on it where someone was interested in, hey, what was that thing that you did at the end? And it was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this thing has something that I could do with it. And then it took a while to kind of detach it from this code base and bring it into its own thing that could be used in other code bases. But once I was able to do that, it was great because I was able to just kind of drop it in. And there isn't like, it's not a one size fits all because everybody has different ways of creating the architecture of their design system. And that's the main reason why we put in that considerations markdown file and the documents directory for the AI to process to make better informed decisions for any uniqueness that comes out of that design system.
Mm.
And I could show you, this is like what the markdown file looks like. So this is, I don't have anything in this one right now, but it's just this story UI AI considerations. And there's like core principles, component usage rules, layout component, spacing, color system, import guides. So all of this is like do's and don'ts. And like I was saying, this is like the last line of defense. Like, don't use inline styles or anything. Don't use like SX props, and make sure that you're doing things in accordance with the way that the component library has been structured. And then this is like the UI docs. There's nothing in here right now, but when you initialize it, it'll put the story UI docs in here. And then you could break them up into each one of these different categories if there's anything specific about components, guidelines, patterns, tokens, governance. And this little readme where you can kind of talk about what should usually go into those, and it accepts JSON or Markdown.
A lot of questions around like the portability of it. Like my understanding is because you built it as an MCP server, this will work anywhere where you can tell an LLM to use the MCP server. But is that correct?
It's right now it's local, but
okay.
That if you had this on a server somewhere, you can convert the MCP to be remote, and then you can. So you'd have to. We've done this before where we've put the storybook in kind of a dev mode on a server, and then allowed just attached a URL, password protected, publicly accessible domain where you can access it, and then anyone. I mean, obviously, like depending on your organization, you might want to put some restrictions on that, on, maybe like wipe the stories out every 24 hours or something like that. But as far as the MCP, I've mainly only been using it locally, like with the Claude desktop situation. But it wouldn't be difficult to extend it to, if this is on a remote server, dial into that, like expose that remote MCP, expose that as a remote MCP.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. There's a bunch of like a classic questions around form factor of like using your own chat and story UI, using Claude like to prompt, using cursor to prompt, using what have you to prompt. I think maybe just to I'll try to I'll take a stab at answering this, and maybe you can correct me, TJ.
Yeah.
The way that story UI works is that it allows you to use whatever like form factor you want, whether it's cursor, Claude, what have you. You install the MCP server and you can prompt from there. The story UI exposes tools for that whatever form factor like cursor to use, and it'll generate the stories in your local file system and show them in the storybook sidebar. Is that all right?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, great. So I'm gonna clear out a bunch of questions here.
Yeah.
This is a fun thing to do too. Sometimes if you ever wanted to, I like this exercise. Just recreate. Yeah, if you ever want to see the way a popular layout looks in your own design system. This is a one-shot prompt that's saying recreate. It's got a sticky header, but I think that might have to do with my with this piece. Oh, maybe not. But it's nice to be able to see. I want to see Facebook in my design system, and then you could prompt it, and it's like this is relatively close to LinkedIn.
For sure. Another class of questions is like around the confusion of like where does Figma fit into this? If you don't mind, I'll take a stab at that too, TJ. So a design system can have Figma components. It can also have storybook stories. What we're here today to talk about is like design systems that expose like code as their API. So the stuff that's inside of Story UI doesn't really have a huge bearing on the Figma file, or rather, like there's really isn't really a connection there. Is that right, TJ?
There's no connection there. No, I think the idea with this is that Figma has done its thing, and and all of that work up front has been done on the Figma side in order to make these components as comprehensive as they could possibly be in order for AI to know exactly what to do with them. So whether or not you use this tool to iterate over layouts, to refine, to bring back and refine in Figma, that could be a flow. Or if they're just good enough and you want to keep it the way it is, then maybe it's more move that into development to refine, or maybe it's or just we like it as is. Let's refine it on the product side.
Right, right. So for the designers here, CM, I think Abraham, this is probably has less to do with like your Figma workflow and uh, than you might think. Really, what we're talking about here is a development workflow, and if how it gets back into Figma is going to be up to your organization and like you as a developer or designer, rather than something that like a tool can connect for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
People are wondering if you're going to show the visual builder tab.
Yeah, yes. So one of the issues that we get with some people who I was explaining this a little earlier, and so Visual Builder is very much in dev mode, and I'm on the dev branch of Visual Builder right now, but I'll show you where it's at. Sometimes you just want to tweak vertical spacing, and you don't want to ask AI to just reiterate like another prompt on top of the follow-up prompt to generate another version of that, because it's similar to, and I make this analogy a lot. It's like I don't know, context engineering versus prompt engineering. Like there's a level of uh, detail that would need to go into your prompt in order to ensure that the iterative, whatever the next iteration for the update is, that ensures that everything else stays in its place, but that one little piece changes. So if you look at like creating an image in Midjourney, then if you ask it to update something, then there's likely going to be a lot of artifacts in that image that's going to change. So the same thing happens when generating code. So the idea with Visual Builder was that you can generate something like this, and then you could bring it into Visual Builder, and then you would get this type of almost like I don't know, like a Webflow type layout where you can highlight these different components that are in here. So this is the image component that's highlighting. It's saying the source that it is. It's saying the alt tag that it applies to it. All the properties that appear on the media image component, aspect ratio, whether it's fit, cover, contain, fill, and then you can adjust all these spacing things. So if I wanted, like, I want more room at the bottom. So if I click that, it pushes that down. And if I wanted to do something like make this a now, so I could do that. And then I don't like this preview button here, so I'm just going to delete that. And then I could save the story. It says, okay, we saved it. Oh, of course, I'm going to get an error there. What this normally does, the issue with this is that sometimes it has trouble finishing the story. Let's delete the story, and then we'll try again. Like I said, this is very much in development right now. So we'll do something simple, like I'll just choose that button, and then I'll delete that button, save that story. It's still giving me issues with it. Well, the demo.
People in the chat are stoked. TJ, they're stoked. Omar is, yes, take my money. And Jake Lewis is, Windows 95 is so hot right now. I don't know what that's related to.
I thought this was a pretty interesting question of how does Story UI handle the situation where you don't have the necessary components like for it to reference?
Then it does a best guess improvisation. Like it'll go in and try to assemble other components to put. We've had this issue before where I was working with a design system that didn't do layouts, where there was like part of the design system didn't do box, containers, flex, grid, anything like that. So what it was trying to do is slip everything inside of a accordion, believe it or not. So I think this one just worked. I just deleted like 4 buttons from right here, and then it'll put it in this edited section. I can click on it, and you can see I just deleted those buttons from right there. It's about, the visual builder is about, I don't know, 65% of the way there. It works most of the time. The more content, the more component that it has to run through, the more difficult it is for it to process. But it does feel very promising, and I'm happy to get it to where we've actually gotten it. Also, I know you've probably been seeing on we do have the ability to do regular icons too, because I know a lot of these have been producing like emojis for these icons.
Oh, yeah.
But I was demoing this earlier today, just kind of doing a dry run through, and because I'm on the visual builder branch, the visual builder is having some issues with like icon properties, because it's got to load all those in so you can do like a little icon selector, and so I turned that feature off. So we get emojis.
All right. There have been some questions about, does it have to generate storybook stories, or can it use Figma to generate actual application code?
Got to be Storybook stories because it's using the actual coded components.
Yeah. Okay. And then also maybe related is like, so Figma is perhaps like the primary source for this, but does it also pull in, like if you have existing stories, for example, will it try to like use the patterns found there
If
in
you
its generation?
have, so you could tell it what directories to look in to, you could designate a subset of components that you want to use to generate layouts or inventories, but it's not limited to that. So you could direct it towards a directory that has every component, and then in the considerations file, if that directory structure has some deprecated components, you can like list out which ones not to use, and then the AI would know not to ever pull those in.
Gotcha.
So Valentine asks, what are some things you don't want this project to do? I get the sense that it's not intended to create components for you. The outputs are intended to be demos for clients. Do you see more ephemeral stories? Do you see this more for ephemeral stories or for ones that are maintained as documentation?
Any and all. It really depends on the intended business use. So originally, I liked it because it's like we said earlier, it just takes a lot of time to create stories to show every variant, and that was one of the biggest efficiencies that we got out of it, just to kind of move it forward. And then the other piece was being able to show clients how the components that we've developed come together to create things like an inventory dashboard, or some of these more complex composites of components. But some of the other things might be the Storybook instance that they're using is maybe a little aged, and maybe the resources are lighter these days as they were before, and product owners and project managers need ways to see what's available. Maybe documentation isn't great, and we need ways to link to specific instances or specific combinations of components. This would be a quick way to show what those things look like when they're coupled together. I like comparisons. Like if you want to compare dark mode versus light mode, you can say, show me all buttons in dark mode versus light mode in a side-by-side 2-column grid, and it'll just print them all out for you in 15 seconds. So it's little things like that that are outside of, build me a LinkedIn clone. It's other things that I think are helpful, more along the lines of, show me all of the validation states of a form field. Show me all of the form fields with their validation states. And that could be a QA part where it says, okay, it looks like we're missing, validation on an upload, file upload field. So outside of just like this cool accordion, but there's lots of other things that we found value in.
Yeah, there's like power when you give people the ability to solve their own problems
Yeah.
using your design system. And sometimes they're like, from a QA perspective, it's exactly as you said, show me all the variations from a composition and layout standpoint. Like show me this button in a card component inside of this page alongside these other this other kind of demo layout. So it's almost like stress testing, TJ.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a great way. Yeah, I haven't used that term before, but I think that's a great way to do it because you can abuse it. Like you could just
yeah,
do like whatever with it, and it's not like it's costing you a lot of tokens because it's you're not exhausting a context window. It's relatively simple to put these things together. And look, it created a Game Boy, so if you just wanted to have fun with it, you could do this kind of stuff too. It's not
so
it's not a
maybe
great
like,
Game Boy, but it's actual buttons that it used too,
right.
and these are icon buttons.
Maybe you could tell us like we have a question in chat, and this is kind of a pervading question. Like, how is this different than like Claude Code or Cursor that has access to
Because the
it? Like,
purpose of this was for non-developers. The
right,
purpose of this was never intended for, unless it's a developer that wants to use it just to play around with it or just to create additional stories because that was part of the task. It's like develop in QA and run tests on that component and then generate a story for every single or story variant for every single button or put all of the buttons on one story so that way we can compare and contrast. This is just a quick, if you have a component library that consists of 50 plus components, then that's a lot of work, like over time. So you could probably salvage a week or two just by using a tool like this.
yeah,
But
Could you
the
share
original intent,
specifically?
sorry,
Go
go
ahead. No, finish your thought.
was not really made for developers. That's why I was stressing like using MCP clients like Claude Desktop, which isn't an IDE or isn't a command line interface. That way that anybody who has a Windows machine can pull it up and then prompt away from that, pending that we were using a remote MCP connection, and this is somewhere that's accessible via a web browser.
So I was going to ask if you could clarify specifically what kind of non-developer people have actually used this thing.
uh, Project managers, product owners,
Okay.
mostly project managers and designers too, because I think it's one of those things where sometimes you just want to see some stuff put together, and I think that's one of the cool ways of other fellow agency owners
yeah.
and mostly people playing around with it. Um, but
I
yeah,
think that
that's the intended use
yeah,
for people who just don't have access to a code base, or if your team is already prioritized on other revenue generating things and there's some A/B testing or just some proof of concept testing that you want to do, this is a good tool for that. And it's made for the people who would typically be doing those types of tests.
yeah. Thanks, TJ. I recognize
Yeah.
that we are approaching or are at time, and um, of course, there are a bunch of like questions still, which we probably won't get to answer.
Yeah.
We
But
could do a
I
part
wanted
two.
to, yeah, yeah. I think the reception for this stuff like is so fantastic. I want to stress that we're all like this is all new to everyone, right?
I have
And
no idea what I'm
so
doing.
we're still trying to figure out exactly what use cases there are for AI inside of developer workflow and development teams. And yes, while it can seem like there are these like large large language model companies that are kind of pushing the boundaries, like not everyone's still trying to figure things out. And so I really want to express my gratitude, TJ, for you kind of leading the pack here, showing us what's possible. And for the folks that are in the chat that are asking questions that are wondering about this, I encourage you to like explore this. Try out Story UI, try out Claude Code, try out all the things, and then come up with ways that you can add it to your workflow, and maybe we'll have you up here to share some things that you're working on too, so we can all learn together. Um, Kyle or TJ, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Kyle, for inviting me here. I know, Dom, we had a lot of conversations before leading up to this,
Yeah,
and I've been loving seeing what y'all are doing. Big Storybook fan for since day one. So thank you for everything that y'all do. I know there is a lot of questions. I'm available literally anywhere. The design system Slack, multiple Slacks, LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on. So if anybody wants to see like the evolution of Story UI and where it's come from months ago to where it is now, or any new features that are rolling out, LinkedIn is probably the place to be. Feel free to connect. Feel free to DM me. I'm happy to answer any of those questions there as well.
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
share your screen and open LinkedIn so that people can kind of see what you look like and what
Yeah.
your avatar looks like, so they can find you.
Yeah. So we'll just do the browser this time.
While he's doing that, I'll just second. TJ does an excellent job sharing progress of like things he's excited about, what he's working on, what's coming. Yeah, he's a fun follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely connected with him on LinkedIn. So, yeah, Adam, follow him.
Yeah.
TJ, is there any other place that you want to thing you want to shout out while you're here?
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in any design systems consulting or design systems team augmentation or product development acceleration type stuff, I own a front-end design and development agency that's been around for going on 14 years. Work with a lot of large organizations, but also smaller, mid-tier, no project too small, no project too big. Um, and we love collaborating with other partner agencies as well. So if anybody wants to reach out about anything, we're happy to just chat and talk through stuff. It doesn't have to be anything project specific, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for demoing everything today, TJ. Really appreciate it. We got to have you on again sometime.
Absolutely.
And thanks.
That was great.
Thanks everybody that has joined us and for your questions and enthusiasm. Makes it fun.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
See y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Talk later.